college football is still growing as a market.
The College Football Playoff Board of Managers unanimously voting today on a model that includes the 5 highest-ranked conference champions and the next 7 highest-ranked teams.
The recently expanded playoffs now include a total of 12 teams, and we're likely to see it expand again in the not-so-distant future. I would imagine this was a move by the committee to idealize a more competitive and democratic climate. Sure, they'll tell you it's about opportunity, about giving more teams a chance. But let's be real. This idea that anyone can cook when it comes to the Natty Tournament is still lost on many, of course. And we'll get to that.
Now, who is that?
Oh, him? He's nobody.
He is part of the kitchen.
No.
How do you know? What do I always say? Anyone can cook.
Well, yeah, anyone can. That doesn't mean that anyone should.
I think 64 teams, but I think the minimum's 16. If you had 16 teams, then I think we could settle a whole lot of these issues. You know, it doesn't matter what the East Coast or Los Angeles or anybody in between thinks. All of a sudden there's 16 teams. Oh, geez, number 16 beat number 4. Well, screw number 4. Number 4 is out, you see, because number 16 got them, you know.
The dominant forces aren't untouchable the way they used to be. Some people are going to find that hard to swallow. But there's more to this than meets the eye, I think. For starters, it feels like we should seriously be considering the fact that there is an outdated double standard about how wins and losses are interpreted, and based primarily on a team's status as a brand. And that it's not just about getting an invite to the kitchen to cook a dish. It's about having your food judged by the same standards as everyone else. Right there is the large part of the problem as I see it, and one that I hope to really pin down with this video. But first, we need to examine a case study. Bloomington, Indiana. Bloom, a valley deep in the forest hills of the southern Midwest. 200,000 acres, deep wilderness and fresh water. Welcome to the Rock, jewel of the Hoosiers.
And now Indiana, ready to burst through. And picked off off the sideline. Indiana walking them down. Woo! IU America. They got a football team now.
If Indiana wants to earn their seat at the big kids' table, then they have no choice but to challenge the pre-established hierarchy, not just in the Big Ten, but everywhere. There can be no mistakes. I believe this is the reason the motto, Indiana versus everybody, was eventually coined, and the hunt for the perfect season was on.
And now first down. Indiana trying to get to 10 wins for the first time. Trying to beat Michigan for only the second time in 29 years.
In order to better understand how Indiana got to where they are as a program, and perhaps more importantly as a brand, we need to take an in-depth look at their history, the lore.
35 seconds to go from Memorial Stadium. Head coach Bill Lynch and his Indiana Hoosiers hanging tough, with the team ranked 16th in the BCS standings, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Here is fourth down from the 19. Chappell gets it away to the end zone. It's Belcher. Touchdown Hoosiers.
So now they're ruling this pass is incomplete. From up here, it looked like DeMarlo Belcher came down with this football. And there it is right at the end. You see it fall right off of his right hip. And this entire stadium thought that Indiana was going to upset the Hawkeyes, but right at the last second.
Ruling on the field is an incomplete pass. Indiana is challenging the previous ruling. Further review, the ruling on the field is confirmed. Incomplete pass.
Incomplete on 4th and 10.
You know, you can say whatever you want about this call. I guess
From here,
it stuck with me because it felt like the official decision on the field was never about the complex finer points of the catch or no catch. The arbitrary rules that dictate how much evidence is needed to overturn a ruling made by an official seemed to hardly even apply here. Indiana wasn't playing for anything. There was nothing to lose, nothing to gain, at least from a broader perspective anyway. Of course, if you were number 16 Iowa in this scenario, I would guess you might stand to lose a lot. I mean, it's as if by this point even they had somehow internalized the idea that as far as IU football, this was just business as usual. Close losses in crucial moments like these tell the story of a program perpetually on the brink of a breakthrough, only to fall agonizingly short. A long history of moments like this have created all manner of what-ifs for the Hoosiers, any of which might have had the potential to change the trajectory of the team. A team who has always had to find their feet amidst so much heartbreak, only to be knocked down again. It's evident that Indiana grows eager to shed this frustrating underdog identity. And from the outside looking in, it's very easy to be apathetic towards a team whose achievements seem to live constantly in the shadow of its lowest moments. Really makes you wonder how much of that is truly on Indiana, if there's some kind of effort happening behind the scenes to perpetuate this narrative. It's precisely this reason that Indiana has gone to such extremes to change its image. It was hardly even that long ago Indiana was going back-to-back seasons virtually winless in the Big Ten. The 09 and 2010 Hoosiers who played Iowa in the segment I showed earlier would finish their respective seasons 1-7 in conference play, and would go on to finish the 2011 season with a record of 1-11. Between 2015 and 2019, Indiana would lose all 3 of its bowl appearances under 1 score or less. And in 2023, the Hoosiers will become the first team out of Division I or Division II to amass a total of 700 losses, period. Now, if you wanted me to pin down exactly what happened to make this come to reality, I really don't think I could explain it to you in a simple sentence. Maybe it was the pistol offense. Maybe it was the fact that the football program was always intended to be a feeder for Indiana basketball. Maybe it was because the network loved using Indiana to televise an early season smackdown by teams like Michigan and Ohio State so they could glaze their premature rankings. Only until the Hoosiers started getting too close to actually winning them. In 2015, too close became terribly close. Number 1 ranked Ohio State rolled into Bloomington, fresh off a national championship, riding a 17-game winning streak, and expecting business as usual. What they got was a dogfight. Indiana wasn't content on showing up to be anyone's highlight reel. Down 2 scores in the fourth quarter, the old Indiana might have folded, accepted their role in someone else's story. But instead, it seemed like Indiana would finally get a chance to rewrite the script. An upset was in the air.
He just won 3 sprints in the second half. Diamont trying to get to the outside on his feet. Diamont! Touchdown! 79 yards! Are you believing this? And now it all comes down to this 4th down play with 9 seconds left in the game. Bad snap. Throws for the end zone, jump ball tipped, incomplete. The ball got past Xander.
Does it seem a bit familiar? Does it seem like we've been here before? Well, actually, no. Indiana hadn't been within 1 score of upsetting a number 1 nationally ranked team, at least not in my lifetime. The stakes kept rising, each game bigger than the last, playing with real fire and going out on their own terms. But here's where it gets interesting. How would the media portray this growth, Indiana's evolution as a team? Take a look at this thumbnail from this year's Indiana-Ohio State game. Indiana played perhaps their worst game of the season, yet it's framed as a top 5 win for Ohio State. Remember, this is the same Indiana the critics had said hadn't played anybody. Funny how that works, isn't it? When Ohio State needs a quality win, suddenly Indiana counts. This is no coincidence. This is brand protection working exactly the way it's supposed to. Well, you need more proof? Let's roll back this year's Ohio State-Michigan game. The ending. Michigan maybe waves their flag around a little bit and plants it at center field after the game. A tradition that's as old as college football itself. And suddenly the Columbus Sheriffs are breaking out pepper spray. ESPN commentators aren't talking about the excessive force against athletes by Columbus. No. They're clutching their pearls and talking about Michigan's disrespect.
An unsportsmanlike gesture by the Wolverines. Unnecessary. They've won the game. No need to be disrespectful.
Now, you might be asking, why would networks like Fox and Big Noon Kickoff go through all this trouble to protect a team like Ohio State's image? Well, I can't say for certain exactly what financial arrangements exist between networks and programs, but when you see this kind of narrative protection for a program with an estimated $20 million football payroll, kind of makes you wonder. Makes you wonder exactly what it is that's being protected here. Is it the sanctity of the game? We know that's not it. We eat this shit up. Or is it someone's investment? Still not convinced? Let's look at one last thing. Rewind the clock to the COVID pandemic. In 2020, the Big Ten initially established a rule that teams must play at least 6 games to be eligible for the conference championship. This was part of their return-to-play protocols during COVID-19. Ohio State had played only 5 games due to cancellations, which would have made them ineligible. Indiana had played 6 and would have represented the East Division in the championship game. However, on December 9th, 2020, the Big Ten Conference Administrators Council voted to eliminate the 6-game minimum requirement. Their stated rationale was that the decision was based on a competitive analysis which determined that Ohio State would have advanced to the Big Ten football championship based on its undefeated record and a head-to-head victory over Indiana regardless of a win or loss against Michigan. Michigan canceled their game. What I love most here is the language that they use literally implies that Ohio didn't make it. And the next thing they go on to say here is, we're effectively electing Ohio champions of the East Division because that's how we feel. And our rules don't mean anything. But if you're Indiana, you already know that. The message here was clear. Rules are rules unless they get in the way of the right team, and some programs get to play by different rules literally. I think the important thing to note here is the reason I'm using Indiana as an example for this is because that Indiana's identity isn't something the Hoosiers can claim 100% responsibility for. It's also something that's been imposed on them, quite literally being denied the opportunity to compete. This year we heard a lot of personalities buzzing around the college football corners of the internet. They don't think Indiana belongs. And they're right. Indiana was never supposed to belong. Indiana was never supposed to be in the playoffs. It's almost like it happened on accident. And that's what makes it so goddamn impressive. You can be sure that if there was only room for one Big Ten team in the college football playoffs, that Indiana would have never had a chance to be there. The college football playoff expansion paves the way for teams like Indiana to break from these biases and enter a level playing field. I just hope it stays that way.
Let's see how they do it. Okay, let's see. These guys, they win a certain number of games. They have a qualification. Okay, now, boom, they're in the playoffs. But they don't have just 2 or 4 teams or something. Hell no, because they want everybody to have fun and enjoy this playoff system. So they have 16 or 32 or 64 or something like that. Okay, so then they play each other, and everybody's on the edge of their seat going to wait and see if this team's going to beat that team or going to beat the other team. And so then, in the end, there's occasionally a debate. If only this team hadn't lost to that team in this round, then this team could have won the whole thing, and that's perhaps true. But the thing that is indisputable is that at the end of the gauntlet, this team came out on number 1, and there's no debate whatsoever who's state champion.